Fantasy Freaks and Geeks, what's going on? James Coe here with you. All right, it is a Thursday when you're listening to me here. Obviously, we're going to be talking about sleepers. I mean, shoot, it's called the Sleeper King Football Podcast. So of course, we're going to be talking about sleepers. I did want to start here by talking about some injuries, though, we are tracking. Getting you ready here for Thursday Night Football. Romeo Doubs is out again with a concussion. That's a little bit of a surprise here. It obviously opens up some target share for Jayden Reed, who is in a real smash spot, boys and girls. The Lions have allowed the most yards, receptions, and fantasy points to slot receivers this year. Jayden Reed, obviously primarily a slot man for the Green Bay Packers. And again, so with that target share opening up with Romeo Doubs, you're anticipating Jayden Reed seeing, decent production here, decent target share, decent volume overall in a great spot against the Detroit Lions. So yeah, we should get very excited about Jayden Reed. If you're playing DFS, put him in the captain spot and let's see what happens here. Might be a little chalky, but that's okay. We like Jayden Reed a lot this week. Hey, Jair Alexander is also out of this game. That obviously raises the ceiling for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but it especially opens a little bit of a door here for Jameson Williams. Jair Alexander obviously would be, taking a look at some of these outside wide receivers. Jameson Williams, their primary outside man there in Detroit. But again, because of the defensive rotations and all that kind of stuff, it's going to open up some opportunities here for Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. Jameson Williams, fantastic sleeper this week against the Green Bay Packers with Jair Alexander out. Okay, Bucky Irving is dealing with a hip injury dealt with a hip injury during his Week 13 game against Carolina, and he did not practice on Wednesday. Now, there doesn't seem to be a huge concern right now, but obviously we're going to monitor. Sean Tucker would be a little bit of a pivot if that hip injury worsens here on Bucky Irving. We're crossing our fingers that the Winter Soldier, Bucky Irving, that doesn't happen to Buck. If Bucky Irving were to miss time, though, I mean, I'm talking about Sean Tucker, but man, Rachaad White obviously would be in a fantastic spot. So, but I'm stating the obvious here. Trevor Lawrence. I talked about Trevor Lawrence potentially because of where the team was at and because of the multiple injuries, and that kind of sort of, came to fruition here. I had talked about how he potentially would go on IR, and lo and behold, the man goes on IR. So shoulder surgery on his non-throwing arm, but obviously also going through the concussion protocol as well. But the season is now over for Trevor Lawrence. Hey, Breece Hall did not practice on Wednesday because of his knee injury, and he was dealing with that knee injury last week as well. I don't know about y'all. I don't think Breece Hall looked very good. I did not think Breece looked great. And obviously his snaps were somewhat limited, but his explosiveness, I don't know how tender that knee is or how much he was protecting it. But I don't think Breece looked very good. He did not look like his normal explosive self. So again, did not practice on Wednesday. I do wonder, because the Jets are just in turmoil right now. Would you be surprised if Breece Hall didn't protect his injury a little bit and sit out for this game on Sunday? If that ends up being the case, obviously Braylon Allen is an absolute, auto pickup if he's not already on somebody's roster, and he's an auto start as well. I think he's got, if it's Braylon Allen in a full dosage of Braylon Allen, oh shoot, man, we're talking top 15 upside here, top 12 upside. Yeah, Braylon Allen becomes an absolute must start if Breece Hall does not go. Sauce Gardner is dealing with a hamstring injury, and that, honestly, it doesn't sound that promising. Now, it's not as if they're saying, oh, he's for sure out, but hamstring injury doesn't sound good, man. The beat reporters seem to, I don't know, there seems to be some negativity, I would say, regarding Sauce Gardner right now. Obviously, if he doesn't play, that's a big-time boon for Tyreek Hill. Although that being said, man, the Cheetah's dealing with a wrist injury too. What's up with all these wrist injuries in the NFL right now? I don't get it. But shoot, actually, the funny thing is all in the AFC East. Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, the Cheetah. A lot of wrist injuries there in the AFC East. But yeah, man, obviously Tyreek Hill dealing with a little bit of a wrist injury too. A wrist that he says he's been, an injured wrist that he says he's been playing through ever since that ridiculous arrest video that we saw emerge in Miami all those weeks ago. I think that was in week 2, actually, which is just insane and crazy. Okay. If he gets a full practice up on Friday, we're not worried about Tyreek. If he doesn't, I think we have to up the ceiling here for somebody like Jalen Waddle. Now, again, we talked about those wrist injuries. I just talked about it. Keon Coleman, he was a limited participant on Wednesday. Now, unlike Breece Hall, it sounds like there's some real positive momentum here for Keon Coleman to play on Sunday. It is a fan-freaking-tastic matchup against the LA Rams. If Keon Coleman has a full practice on Friday, very high risk, high reward play against a Rams defense that has given up the second most touchdowns on deep passes this year. I say high risk, high reward because, again, even if Keon Coleman plays, what does his target share look like? What does his snap share look like? The guy hasn't played in 3 games and he's a rookie. There is some risk that they'll ease him in very slowly. So I don't think Keon Coleman, even if he is a full go, is a must start or a strong sleeper. He's a deep sleeper. That's where I would put Keon Coleman. And again, I would only play him if you're really, really chasing some points here and you need a big number. Okay. When we did this record yesterday, I talked about Patrick Taylor. Then they go and turn around and they sign Israel Abanikanda, which kind of sort of makes my Patrick Taylor take dated and old. That being said, in this particular week, I don't think it's going to be Israel Abanikanda. As a matter of fact, I'm not 100% sure it's going to be Patrick Taylor either. But as I mentioned, Isaac Guerrero does have a long history of hamstring injuries. The next man up is of significant interest here for the fantasy community and for San Francisco in general. Israel Abanikanda, man, wow. What an athlete this guy is. Fantastic athlete, 5'10", 216 pounds. This guy can scoot, man. Now, his 40 time is a little bit all over the place. I saw some stuff like mid 4.4s, and then I don't know how, but then he turned around and ran a high 4.2s, like a 4.27, but also mixed in with the 4.44 or something like that. Anyway, I saw another place, Bleacher Report says he ran a 4.39. We'll go with that. But anyways, his speed is undeniable. Again, 216 pounds. Let's say this guy runs at worst in the low 4.4s. That is crazy fast. And then you talk about short area burst. I mean, a crazy 41-inch vertical. 41-inch vertical for Abanikanda at 216 pounds? Yo, this guy is an athlete, man. Let me tell you something. Second-year player out of Pitt. Obviously was super productive there for Pitt as well. Had about 1,650 total yards, and he averaged 6.0 yards per carry his final season there at Pitt. So, Israel Abanikanda, listen, very, very interesting player. I would say, again, if you're playing Dynasty, absolutely got to go and add Israel Abanikanda. Who knows what's going to happen here with that running back room? It's always very murky with San Francisco, but a relatively serious knee injury here, PCL tear for CMC. He's out for the entire year. I mean, shoot, who knows what that recovery looks like? You know what I mean? Again, a little bit of an older player with a lot of mileage. Israel Abanikanda is certainly an interesting player. I mean, think about it where Elijah Mitchell was at too. Completely unknown player. Trey Sermon at the time was a 3rd-round draft pick and he outplayed it. It's just with Shanahan and that scheme, you just never know. You just never know. All right, let's get to some wide receiver sleepers here. There's a few that I'm really interested in, you guys. And yeah, man, we'll start with New York. Let's talk about Sterling Shepard in New York. Let's talk about Tampa Bay. Sterling Shepard. I see Sterling Shepard. I immediately think New York guys. Yeah, my brain is still stuck in 2015. So let's go. But no, Sterling Shepard taking on Las Vegas. Shepard has moved around the formation quite a bit, but with Mike Evans back in the fold there, he did play about 70% of his snaps lined up inside with Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan as the primary outside guys last week. Now, the Raiders have given up the second most touchdowns and the seventh most fantasy points per game to inside wide receivers on the season. Sterling Shepard is a little bit more of a deeper sleeper, but again, I do think he'll see volume in this passing attack against Las Vegas. And as I mentioned, pretty good matchup overall against the Raiders. Nick Westbrook-Akine. Now, I talked about NWI in my, what was it, my waiver wire episode? I think this was 2 days ago. But we love this matchup against Jacksonville, right? We know he's got 8 touchdowns over his last 8 games. He's tied for the 4th most touchdowns in the NFL right now, which is just... it's so crazy, man. Now, again, I said it then, I'll say it again. I hate chasing points. I understand. But, dude, the matchup is great. Jacksonville has allowed the most yards and the 3rd most receptions to receivers lined up outside. You add it all up, man. They've allowed the 2nd most fantasy points per game to outside wide receivers. That's where NWI plays the vast majority of his snaps. I think last week he played about 80% of his snaps lined up out wide, right? So, and oh, by the way, shoot, I don't hate the volume either, man. So it doesn't feel like your traditional, chasing the points, because chasing the points are these guys that got low volume. I'm not saying he's seeing huge volume, but there is obviously a dearth of pass catchers in Tennessee. And as a result, NWI has seen 5 or more targets in 4 of his last 5 games. Now, you'd like to see the guy see at least 7 targets in this ball game, but 5, you can make do with that against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense that tends to give up a lot of big plays, right? Nick Westbrook, he makes a lot of big plays. You put those things together, man, and again, I don't think this is a traditional chasing the points play here. I actually just think that Nick Westbrook-Akine, solid sleeper against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. All right, if you're looking for another one, how about Darnell Mooney taking on Minnesota? Moon's over Miami, has been held in check the last 2 weeks, but that was against 2 really tough defenses in the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. The Vikings, meanwhile, I think they're a better real-life defense than they are for fantasy purposes, because they get a lot of sacks and turnovers. A ton of sacks and turnovers, which are great. Those are drive killers. Those are game-changing type plays. But that being said, they also, because of this hyper-aggressive gambling style, they give up a lot of plays as well. They give up a lot of plays. They give up a lot of big plays. They have allowed the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers in general this year. And prior to his 2-game skid, remember, Mooney had posted 3 really, really strong games in a row. 18.6, 19.8, and 14.6 PPR points, respectively, in those back-to-back-to-back games. Now, I'll say this. I also have talked about very publicly that I'm worried about Kirk Cousins right now. I mean, he looked like dog water in that game against the Chargers. There was no arm strength whatsoever. It was so bad, it's to the point where I think he's injured. There's no way he could have played that poorly healthy. So that being the case, I'm obviously extremely worried about Kirk Cousins in this ball game against Minnesota. Okay, but the other side of that is, can the old man find one more revenge game in him? If we know anything about Kirk Cousins, it's that you like that attitude. You know what I mean? Like, if he goes and sees, I remember when he was in Minnesota, if he goes and sees Washington, he's going to put up a number now. Right? So I wonder if the old dog's got one last revenge game in him. Does he? Against his former Minnesota squad? I could see it. I don't know if he's got to get some Toradol or what. I don't know what's got to happen. But I do wonder if Kirk Cousins has got just one last revenge game in him. And if that's the case, Drake London's going to benefit. Shoot, Darnell Mooney is going to benefit too. I really like Darnell Mooney as a potential sleeper this week. Again, let's obviously keep an eye on Kirk Cousins' health, but if he comes in there right, I'll take a stab at Darnell Mooney. Absolutely. Why not? Deep sleeper here for you. How about Trey Tucker against Tampa Bay? Again, another player we talked about in a deep sleeper segment. I believe this was yesterday, actually, so I won't bore you here. But obviously, Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been giving up a lot of production to the outside. In fact, they've given up the second most receptions and the third most touchdowns to outside wide receivers. Trey Tucker, a very high risk, high reward, deep sleeper for the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, finally, how about Brandon Cooks against Cincinnati? This one is so interesting, man. Look, it could be Jalen Tolbert as well. I don't think that we will see both guys pop off. It doesn't seem likely anyways, but I will say this. Brandon Cooks saw more targets than Jalen Tolbert last week, 7 versus 4, and he ran a similar number of routes. So Jalen Tolbert ended up running more routes, but Cook was right there with him. And again, 7 versus 4 targets for Brandon Cooks. I'll take it all day long. I will take that all day long. The matchup against Cincinnati, it's obviously one of the best on the board. Come on now. Cincinnati has given up the 6th most yards to outside wide receivers this year and the 5th most fantasy points. Yo, get this, all right? The Bengals have allowed 15 plus PPR points to starting outside wide receivers in 5 of their last 6 games. Can you imagine? Brandon Cooks giving you out of nowhere, giving you 15, you'd be loving life. You'd be loving life. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Brandon Cooks, I think he's catching a touchdown against Cincinnati. I really like him this week. I really do. I think he's a fantastic deeper sleeper for you this week. Again, if you're chasing a big number. All right, so there you go. That's your wide receivers. Tomorrow we'll come back. We'll talk some more, running. I hesitantly say running back because, man, I have looked at it and there's just not a lot out there. And a lot of the information I've already kind of sort of talked about in previous episodes this week, both on the waiver wire and on a deep sleeper segment from yesterday as well. So I don't know, man, we got to take a look around. But, for sure at some point we'll be talking about running backs, tight ends, and quarterback sleepers that we like here as well as we get you ready here for a stupid week number 14. And I say stupid with all the vitriol in my heart. 6 teams on a bye. NFL schedule makers, what are we doing? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Anyways, if you haven't subscribed, hit me with the subscribe. That'd be great. Or you can always find me online at James D. Co. And of course, be sure to check out the website. Sleeper article will drop every Friday. The waiver wire article has some deep sleepers in it already. But again, if you want my full sleeper list, go to the website, sleeperkingfootball.com. All right, man, we'll talk to you guys soon. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, remember, it's never too late to chase your dreams. Peace.